Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, dear listeners. This is Comeza Radio Africa, the mind, the journey, the destiny. We apply our mind to the journey that takes us to our destiny. We inform and entertain. We develop and educate. We empower and support. We associate and network. That is the idea. We are a business and professional management services 24/7 internet streaming radio station. We broadcast music and talk shows across the world. The objective is to use the African storytelling and the Lekgotla conversation methodology in offering career coaching, education and learning guidance, continuous professional development, enterprise and entrepreneurship development, and connecting supply to demand. Our talk shows aim to affirm and support business professionals and entrepreneurs in their personal and professional journey of bringing difference to the world. These are talk shows that recognize excellence and greatness. Professionals and entrepreneurs are invited as a recognition of the great contribution they are making to humanity. My name is Zeng Msimang. I am the CEO and Executive Business Coach at Comeza GOC International. You can check our website at www.comeza-goc.com, or you can drop us an email at callcenter@comeza-goc.com. I have a guest with me, my sister Zeng, who is going to share with us her professional life journey and the work she does at the foundation, the Tambo Foundation. Did I say it right? Or is it Adelaide and Oliver Tambo Foundation? What is their proper name?
It is the Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation.
Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation. Thank you very much. We're going to talk about that a little bit later as the highlight of our conversation. I'm sure a lot of people, there's nobody who doesn't know about Oliver and Adelaide. They are our fathers, and they are our father and mother, but the foundation probably is what we need to tell a little bit more so that people understand the work you do. But perhaps before we do that, let me check with you how you have been doing together with the team and the family during these difficult times, of lockdown. How have you been doing?
I think we have been surviving. One doesn't want to use the term surviving because you're always told it should rather be thriving.
Yeah.
But these really are unprecedented times, and it's really not easy. So I think we've just had to adjust like everyone else. We're working from home now, and we're employing a lot more of technology than we did before. So we're using the webinars. We're doing webinars as opposed to events and that sort of thing. And I think it's definitely been a challenge, but what keeps one hopeful is that we're definitely not going through it alone. So it is unprecedented, and everyone is on some level affected by this thing called COVID. So it is just about all of us getting together and working and seeing how we can get through this. But I'll be honest, it hasn't been easy.
And for all of us, and if there's one thing that is common to all of us is to try to cope with the so-called new normal, whatever that means, meaning that things have shifted and we need to carry on. But I don't know whether when the situation change, we are ever going to go back to where we were before.
I don't see. I think there's a lot of good things that have come out of this from a professional perspective, just in terms of the way in which we work. As much as we've learned a lot about the fault lines that COVID has exposed in South Africa, for those who are in the minority and able to work from home, it has shown us a lot about different ways of working and how you can still be effective and efficient without necessarily having to drive from point A to point B.
Beautiful. I have always known you as Sister Zeng professionally. You and I, we have interacted a lot. But for the benefit of the listeners, perhaps you should tell us your full names. And Zeng Msimang is what I call you, but I'm sure there are other names that the parents gave you that we don't know of. Maybe you can just take us along, where were you born and which part of the world were you born in, and what did you grow up doing? What type of schooling did you go to? I always make this joke that I wish, it's not even a joke, it's a fact. I wish I went to a kindergarten when I grew up, because I just love what the modern education is like today. You go to kindergarten and you just learn to be with other children. And by the time they send you to school, you are so much looking forward to. It wasn't the case with some of us. And I wonder if that was the case with you, and how was that? And where did that happen? And let's start perhaps there.
Yes, I think that's a bit of a story in itself, because it wasn't one place. I was born in Lusaka. Well, first of all, my full name is Zengeziwe. So Zengeziwe Msimang.
Yeah.
So Zeng is for those that are a bit closer, but the official title is Zengeziwe. But I was born in Lusaka, Zambia. Parents who were in exile. My father was a freedom fighter. He was part of the MK High Command. His name is Mabuso. And my mother was a Swazi student who then ended up marrying a revolutionary and kind of becoming part of the movement herself. And I have two older sisters, Sisonke and Mandla. And the oldest was born in Swaziland. Mandla and I were born in Zambia. And we moved around a lot. So we weren't in Zambia for long, or meaning I wasn't. I think we left when I was still very young. I'm not sure what age. And then we went on to Kenya, where I also don't have much of a memory of that. I was also quite young. Then we moved to Canada, where I have more of a memory. I remember starting school there. I remember feeling very left out because there were very few Black people in Canada at the time, and definitely not in the school that I was in. So that was, it was an interesting place to grow up.
Which city was that in Canada? Ottawa.
Capital city.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and then from Canada, we went back home. Well, when I say back home, I mean back to the continent.
Yeah.
So we went back to Kenya, lived there for, I think, about 3-4 years, and then moved on to Ethiopia, where we stayed for about 2-3 years. And then freedom came to South Africa.
Yeah.
So we came back home in 1993, just before the elections. I was too young to vote, but we came home in 1993.
And you came to the home that you have heard of and had not seen before, ne?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I came to the promised land. That's what they.
and
that's what it was to me.
That must have been quite an experience for you.
Oh, it was amazing. I think there's something about being in exile without having, my parents were in exile, but they knew what home looked like, as opposed to being born outside of home and being raised with that people constantly reminiscing about home, saying one day we'll be free, talking about a place that you've never seen. So I remember when I first arrived in South Africa, we went to Durban, where we are originally from.
Yes.
And so when we landed in Durban, I remember getting off of the plane and we were driving through to town, and I turned to my mother and I said, everybody here could be my sister.
Wow.
or brother that never actually lived in a place where I can see immediately, just from physically, that this is what I look like.
Yeah.
This is almost a place where I belong. So it was very exciting. My knowledge of South Africa before that was through music and through, seeing Brenda Fassie. People at home would record Bop TV.
Yes.
And then send them out, and we would watch those VHSs. So it was amazing to come back home and see and have that sense of belonging and knowing where you're from.
And tell me, you came back home with what sort of education that you had acquired overseas?
Oh, none. Well, not none, but I mean, I was very young. So I was 12 when we came back home.
Oh, yes.
13.
Oh, okay. So how has schooling continued in those early years then? Was the move from country to country considering the timelines of your studies, or was just disrupting it all the way?
No, definitely we moved within a school year.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be mid-year. But I think it definitely had an impact just in terms of the continuity.
Yes.
I was a lot older before. There were definitely little periods that I missed out on, but nothing that would hinder my education.
Good. And was it easy to align your overseas studies with your local studies so that you could continue to your further studies?
Yes, but it was very difficult. So it wasn't easy at all, just in terms of adjusting to the South African. So every school that I had been to prior had been on the American system. So it was international school, and it was in most cases the international school, the American international school, as opposed to the British one or the French one, or etc. So it was a bit of a challenge to kind of adjust and be in. I'd never worn a school uniform before. I hadn't been taught in grades and not forms, which we now have in South Africa, grades, but at the time it was Form 1, 4. And I think just adjusting was pretty overwhelming. It's the first time I had been in the South African education system, so the whole private school. I went to Durban Girls College initially when we first came home. Was also it was quite jarring. There were a lot of rules. It was a completely different system. So it wasn't an easy transition. That I'll say. But it was one that had to remain.
And so your high school was ended there at Durban Girls.
No, see, so I really have my parents have never wanted us to stay still for too long. Clearly, so from Durban we moved to Pretoria, and I went to the Glen High, and then I went to St. Mary's, and I matriculated at St. Mary's and went on to UCT. Wow.
And how was it in the last years? Did you do very well? I assume so.
No, I didn't at all, to be honest. I think that a lot of the moving around a lot, I think it had a lot more of an impact than I understood until I was a lot older meaning this age. So it wasn't easy at all. And it was quite a challenge, definitely. Just not only adjusting, but enjoying a system of education that was so different, So I would love to say that I was the top student, but I wasn't. I was definitely, I did what I needed to do and I worked hard, but I went through quite a long adjustment. So,
and what,
that's the reality.
The
I did subject combination. I'm not even sure. I would have to pull that up.
Yeah.
I did history and politics, and English have always been my passion.
Yeah.
I think I would say those were the subjects that I thrived in. But yeah. So, and we did it obviously on IEB.
Yeah, and then I heard you mentioning that post that you went to study at UCT.
Yes, I went to UCT and I did my degree. I have an undergrad degree, which is a BA honors. A BA. So I did, politics and history. Again, as I said, those were my favorite. So I did a BA with those two as my majors.
How was UCT?
It was wonderful. It was a very vibrant time. It was just before the new millennium. So it was, and Mambela Rambela was our vice chair at the time. So it was really interesting. It was I think an interesting time in the country all around. We were so fresh from freedom, if you will, and there was just a very hopeful time, and you saw that UCT was not as diverse as it is now, but it definitely had a lot of diversity to it, more so than one would have found in high school.
I'm sure the discussions in the politics class must have been lit.
Yes, they were, especially because we were going through a period of transformation. So there was a lot of disagreements and a lot of butting, just because the old guard was there and changing.
And this was the time when most of our exiled were coming back. So were there some other children of the exiled families that were with you in some of your studies here in UCT, at UCT?
At UCT, I mean, there are a number of exiles that were with me at school.
Yeah,
I would say more, or returned exiles. I would say more so in school than in university, just because of who I hung out with and the people that I engaged with. Most of the people who had been in exile and returned, I met, if I didn't already know them, I met them through school.
Yeah. So what stand out for you out of your university years that you treasure most, and what were the obvious challenges that everybody goes through that were applicable to you as well?
Well, I think in my university years, one of the biggest challenges was definitely the levels of engagement. I think that we had from the courses that I did and the people that I was engaging with, as I had said earlier, it was a very vibrant time, but it was also a time where South Africa was transforming. So at UC, as in with a high school, there was a lot of transformation that had not yet happened. So as much as there were vibrant debates and all of that, there was still a situation where none of our teachers, I didn't have any black teachers, I didn't have any teachers, in fact, professors of color throughout my university education. So yeah, I would definitely say that was a bit of a challenge, but I think one of the best things about university is that it gives you almost a taste of what adulthood is like. It's not the real world, but you begin to kind of form a sense of who you are and which way you want to go in life. And for me, UCT was very good at putting me into that direction and making me understand that I think I am a generalist, and is one of the reasons that I am, because it just exposed me to so many different kinds of careers that I could have been part of, and that's and I kind of learned so much from that experience.
And was it for the first time that you went away from home, or when you were at the high schools, were you already staying at residences?
No, now that you say it, it was the first time that I didn't live with my parents. Yeah.
Sure.
Or with both of them. There were different times when they also traveled quite a lot. When I was growing up, there was a period where my father lived in Ethiopia, and so he was not full-time at home for about a year, maybe 2 years. But yeah, it's the first time that I've been separated from both of them, which was wonderful. I was very happy to be separated from my parents at that point in my life.
Wow. And just to go back a little bit, you and your siblings, have you always been very close, or they also sort of like pursued their own directions?
Yeah, I think that we are extremely close. I mean, we are very, very, very close. It's very rare that a day goes by that I don't speak to both my sisters. One of whom doesn't live in South Africa. She lives overseas in Australia, and the other one who's here. But I think, again, there's something about moving from place to place as much as we did that bonds the nuclear family in a very special kind of way. It was very important to my parents, especially my mother, that we kind of make each other our own best friends. You know, the first day of school in a new school is not so hard when you have your sisters, when you have your built-in best. So we are definitely extremely close. They went, in our family, writing is very important. It's always been very important. Both my parents have always put a lot of emphasis on being able to articulate ourselves and be able to write well. And so I think in our own ways, we all had that, we have that as an underlying thread in terms of whatever careers that we have chosen to pursue. But my older sister, Sasonke, became and is an author. So that just shows how much the writing was very important to us. So we have definitely gone in different directions, but the core thing that keeps us together, other than our how very close we are, is our passion for this thing that runs through the whole family.
Wow. Yours was quite very well orchestrated. You arrived in the country, you were taken to schools all the way until you went to the university. So you have never really been left out there in the community to sort of like figure out how it is to be back into this society of South Africa. I can imagine every now and then when you were out of the schooling environment, there must have been things that were quite challenging to you. And it will be very interesting for, I don't know how to call those who didn't go to exile, what do you say, the locals? It's also not the right way. But for someone who hasn't been through what you went through, who hasn't lived out there for that long, it's difficult to understand or to even know what are the issues that people like yourself had to deal with, your own way. And now, you are fully very integrated. I could almost say it will be difficult for people to even tell that you were born outside the country and came back and adjusted. You're so fully adjusted. But just out of interest, what were the struggles outside the school? And the school is very structured, but out in the community,
Upon my return home,
yes,
I think the biggest, most obvious struggle was language. So my Zulu was 100% non-existent. I can get by now.
Yes.
But that was, there was no comprehension. It was very difficult. So I think one huge differentiator was language. Language is everything. It's how you communicate,
Yes.
So it was very interesting to look at South Africa as I do and feel as South African as I do and identify with South Africa the way I always had, but then to come home and be told that I'm not South African,
Indirectly or directly sometimes?
Both. Asimo statesimo. I'll never, that's been told to me so many times. But, so it's that thing of knowing that you belong somewhere, but then getting to that place and other people don't view you as belonging in that place, even though you view yourself that way.
Did you have to sit... Did you have to sit back and put it in context and get meaning out of it and move on? Or how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I think it's a process. It's not, becoming or feeling the sense of belonging into a place doesn't happen overnight, And it definitely wasn't a short period of time that it took me I think it's more than for me to feel South African.
Yes.
It was for me to feel accepted by South African.
I see.
I always felt South African. No matter how many countries we lived in and no matter where we went, it was very clear in our home that one day we will be free. And when that happens, we will go home. So it was never a permanent situation. It was a true that we'll go home and then, we'll just perfect. So, it was definitely not easy. And I think that also the misunderstanding that happens, or like you said, the lack of understanding about what it is like on the outside and about what you were even doing there on the outside, especially for somebody who's so young, because you weren't a freedom fighter. You were a child, so it wasn't easy. And it's something that has continued. I mean, up until very recently, I had to have a long debate and was sent away from Home Affairs because I was told that I'm not a South African, despite having South African citizenship. The insistence that you were born in Zambia, so you're a naturalized citizen, which is a technicality. I mean, technically, yes. I am a naturalized citizen, but that is still very jarring when you don't have another place that you necessarily call home. But you're being told that you're not. You don't actually aren't from here.
Yeah.
So,
those are the remnants or the legacies of struggle. I'm sure that every now and then will pop up. But the same impact will be felt by those students, not the same, but in terms of coming back home and reintegrating. Those students that we send overseas to go and study for 5 years, you can imagine when they come back, they almost feel like the same way that you will have felt. Maybe for them it wouldn't be that difficult because they still have the language, but 5 years away from home could be a very long time. You could struggle to reintegrate. But anyway, I just thought we should share with the listeners that little bit. And then you obviously graduated from UCT and then you started the corporate life. When we come back, I want us just to touch on that and then move on to the foundation, because that's really what I would like us to spend some time on. Right? Beautiful.